Hey, I'm Melanie Trailer, and today I'm showing you my finished attic window quilts. Attic window is a pattern from my book, A Life with Quilts. It is the last pattern in the book, and this year, 2022, we made all the quilts in the book. There's 5 patterns. We made them all together in a series of quilt-alongs that started at the beginning of 2022, January, and ended in November 2022. So I finally got this one done. This was the last one, attic window, and definitely the one with the most blocks. I wouldn't say the most difficult, but there was a lot of tiny piecing in this one. It was also on point. Before I get into the details about the quilt, I thought I would tell you that if you wanted to make attic window, you can still watch all of those videos that we made for the quilt along, and I will put a link below this video so that you can find them all in one easy place. Okay, so I made attic window with my Garden Therapy fabrics that come out this month, December. They should actually be here on the 22nd. As soon as they get here, we'll start shipping everything out. That's been pre-ordered. But I made it with Garden Therapy. It's the first thing I got to use Garden Therapy for. And I paired it with Kona Yarrow. So that solid that you're seeing is Kona Yarrow. And I'm okay. I think if I had to redo, I might have went with a cream, just because the first time I ever see a collection, I want to see it with the color white. So I don't know why. It's just a preference thing. But I really, really wanted to do another saturated quilt. So that's another reason why I went with Kona Yarrow. Also, we started this quilt in October, and I was feeling all the fall colors. So that was another reason I went with the Yarrow. Of course, we still have those kits for attic window where you can choose your own background, and cream is an option. So you can actually see what the quilt looks like in those mock-ups that are in our shop, Meander and Make. Here's the little label for the quilt. We make those special in the shop as well. I'll link to that too. But I have been working on quilting this quilt in a class that I'm working on called Finish It. I've talked to you about this class before. The class is all about finishing quilts, and this quilt, attic window, was one of the ones that I used for an example in the quilt. So if you take that class, you'll see me quilting this one up. But I quilted it with swirls, elongated curls, feathers, and pebbles. I think that's all I used in this one. It's densely quilted, and the texture is really, really great. I was actually talking to somebody earlier this week, and we were talking about how before you wash the quilt, you can see the quilting stitches just perfectly laid out in front of you, assuming that you've got some solids in there, right? Because quilting shows up better on solid. But when you wash the quilt, that's when you see all the texture. So they're both good pre-washed and washed, but I don't ever consider it completed until my quilt has been completely washed and dried and it comes out with all that texture. All right, so I told you this one was made with Garden Therapy and Kona Yarrow. The back of it is some of the fabrics in my other collections. I will list those out below and name them for you so you can see them a little bit better. But I used Kona Seafoam for binding, and I did traditional hand stitch binding on this one. I normally prefer the chunky stitch, but I went with that traditional again because that traditional binding demo is in this Finish It class that I'm working on. And that class should be ready, I think, in about 2 to 3 weeks. So it might be a little bit later than I expected. I don't think I put a published date on it, but I think it probably will end up being early January. So the quilting I did all over quilting on it. So it's just that same design over and over and over. And this, again, is part of the class. So you could learn how to do this whole quilt. And I don't think I showed you in the videos I took of the quilt, so I wanted to show you here. But if you watched the in progress video, I told you that I miscut my backing. Where is it? And I ended up with this little sliver. Here it is. this little sliver of added piece because I cut this piece the wrong size. So you can kind of see that a little bit better. Of course, it looks fine. The book where the pattern is located in, A Life with Quilts, that book has scrappy backing instructions for each one of those 5 quilts. So I used the scrappy backing instructions for this quilt, but I just miscut this piece. It happens to all of us. Also, I was talking about the binding. Maybe you can see that, maybe you can't, but this, so I have a couple of quilts where I did traditional binding. Like I said, I usually prefer the chunky method, the chunky stitch. I like the way it looks, but this method is also, even though I don't use it very much, it was very nice to do. I think that this method is a little bit easier on hands versus the chunky stitch, because the chunky stitch, you've got that huge sashiko needle. You're going through multiple layers of the quilt, you know, stitching that binding. This one, you're having a really small needle and your thread is really tiny, and it's just a lot less strength is needed in my hand to do it this method. With that being said, this probably takes, I want to say, at least half of the time more. I think I ended up with a couple more days extra stitching this binding versus the chunky stitch. So I definitely think this is slower but easier on your hand. Okay, so I wanted to show you this corner. All right, so I've hand bound quilts in this traditional method many times, but I've never stitched the corner before. And I didn't stitch the corner because we don't stitch the corner on any of the other methods. But I have a quilt that it's that golden trippy quilt. That quilt lives on my couch, and it's the one that I'm always curled up under every single night. So my fingernail sometimes gets caught in that binding corner, and it doesn't look bad. It's just like, maybe I should start stitching it up. So I knew the next time I hand bound this way, I was going to stitch that corner. So I did. I stitched the corner, and it looks pretty good. And then I was talking to somebody on Instagram, and she said that when you put your quilts in shows to be judged, that they count points off for not stitching that corner, which is something I didn't know. So it was interesting. I don't know why they would take points off, but I've never entered any shows, so I don't know anything about that anyway. I might actually try to stitch the corner the next time I chunky stitch, just to see what it looks like. I don't know. Something to think about. So that is my attic window quilt finished. I'm so happy to have it finished. It's Christmas time now, and this is not very Christmas colored at all. It's very fall, but I will have it for next fall. I'm definitely going to display it then. Anyway, I cannot wait to get Garden Therapy collection in. It comes in, like I said, on the 22nd, and I am going to hit the ground running on an Inner Beauty. So that's in my plans for the very near future. As soon as it gets here, I'm going to start Inner Beauty. Also, I haven't showed you this, but I'll probably show you really soon, is that I'm finishing up my Sassy Granny quilt. So Sassy Granny was another quilt along that we did this past summer, and I'm quilting it now. I should have probably did an in progress post, but you can kind of see it coming together in the quilt along. But anyway, I'm going to be showing you that really soon, as soon as I get the quilting done, I think. So that's all, I think. If you are interested in the pattern, the fabrics, any of the links that I mentioned, they're all right below this video. I will see you soon.